This week, I found myself watching and rewatching obsessively what sheer human desperation, what the deepest fear, what the deepest darkness looks like. It was 1 minute and 11 seconds. It was on my iPad, and I just could not believe my eyes. Chaos and confusion at the airport in Kabul. Throngs of Afghan citizens who were so terrified, fearing for their lives, so desperate to flee Afghanistan, so desperate to flee the Taliban, that they ran onto the tarmac of that airport, and you had this scene of utter chaos, which I'm sure you've all seen, of airplanes and people in droves. And then there were all of those desperate Afghans who were literally clinging onto anything they could hold onto, a wing, the fuselage, anything that was on the exterior of this military jet, and they continued to hold on for dear life even as the jet started moving. They continued to hold on even as it started soaring, and several of them fell to their deaths. And many of those terrified and desperate Afghan citizens were trying to claw their way onto, not into, onto a jet. We're translators. They helped America. They trusted America. They believed in America. There's a podcast, The Daily, from Thursday this week, which is about those translators and the Marines with whom they served spoke and said that these translators walked onto the minefields with us. These translators took fire with us. We couldn't have fought without them. And now those translators are stranded and left for slaughter in Kabul airport. How are we to understand that heartbreak? And how are we to understand the heartbreak of the heroism and the idealism of America's armed forces over 20 years? How are we to understand the heartbreak of 775,000? Let me say that again. 775,000 soldiers from America who served in Afghanistan, many of them multiple tours of duty. How do we understand more than 20,000 of those soldiers came home maimed, scarred, without limbs? How do we understand 2,400 of our soldiers who died? And soldiers and their families are looking at what happened and asking the question, what was it all for? And all of America is looking at $83 billion and asking, what was it all for? What was it all for indeed? Because now we're about to mark the 20-year anniversary of 9/11. And 20 years later, the Taliban is back in power, more powerful than ever. And Western democracy is in retreat. And the president of Afghanistan fled, ran away to save his own skin, and the army in which we had invested 20 years of training and equipping crumbled in about a week. and fear and terror and desperation and fundamentalism are ascendant, what was it all for? Now, there are two Jewish sources, that can help us interpret this heartbreak. When we ask the question, what was it all for? And there is no good answer. When we ask the question, what was it all for? And there's nothing you can say that comes remotely close to satisfying, the source that you want to look at is Kohelet, Ecclesiastes. This is the first line of Kohelet. Listen to the root. I'll say it in Hebrew. It's not with the same charming accent that Micha Goodman has when he says it in Hebrew. But listen to the recurring root. Okay, this is first line of Kohelet. Havel havalim amar Kohelet. Havel havalim hakol havel. So the root is, of course, Havel. He, Veit, Lamed. It occurs 4 times. Havel, Havalim, Amar Kohelet. Havel, Havalim, Hakol Havel, 5 times. And Havel is translated as futility. Utter futility, said Kohelet. Utter futility, all is futile. But when you actually look up the word or the root, He, Veit, Lamed, Havel, it means vapor or mist, something that is ephemeral, something that doesn't stick, something that doesn't land. And here's the main question of Kohelet. How do we understand human frustration and human failure? How do we understand really caring, really trying, really working, really giving blood, sweat, and tears, really giving heart and soul? And Hakol Havel, it doesn't take, it doesn't work. You've got nothing. You've got mist, you've got vapor, you've got air. So that's the question of Javier Mackey. Javier Mackey is an Army Ranger, Special Forces unit. He serves 7 times in Afghanistan. 7. He is shot at and takes fire twice. Has a close friend who's shot, who dies in his arms. And this week, the Times talks to this guy 7 times. And this is what it says. Mackey saw high-ranking Afghan officers selling off equipment for personal gain, and Afghan troops running away during firefights. And he started wondering what the United States could really achieve by sending thousands of troops to a distant land that seemed to have never known peace. That was in 2008. All that blood, all that sweat, all that tears, and for what? What was it all for? Hakol Havalim. And then there's Ginger Wallace. Ginger Wallace is a retired colonel in the Air Force. And she worked in 2012 with former Taliban fighters. And her job was to retrain people who used to be warriors for the Taliban, that they should do something productive and peaceful for Afghan society. And she actually felt like she was making some traction, and she actually felt like maybe this game could be worth the candle. Maybe Afghan will be a better country. And then this week, when what happened, and she's looking at the TV, it's too painful for her to watch the news, so she switches to the food channel. She knows Afghan is collapsing. She knows Kabul is overrun. And she turns to the food channel. And the New York Times reporter asks her, why the food channel? And she writes, it was too hard to watch. I just cannot help thinking about what a waste it is. I cannot allow myself to think about how after all that blood and all that treasure, it ends like this. All of our heroic and idealistic soldiers, like Ginger Wallace, like Javier Mackey, are asking the question Kohelet asks, which is, how do we understand noble intentions, real labor in pursuit of noble intentions, and it all ends in vapor and mist? So here's Kohelet's answer. This is his famous answer. It's in chapter 9. This is Kohelet's answer. Go, eat your bread in gladness, and drink your wine in joy. Let your clothes always be freshly washed. Enjoy happiness with a woman you love all the fleeting days of life, for that alone is what you can get out of life. In other words, Kohelet's answer to human frustration is live in the moment. Enjoy, savor the moment. Big dreams fail. Big projects get dashed. All you have is the moment that you're in right now. Therefore, if you don't want something to get dashed, eat bread, drink wine, enjoy the moment with the people that you like, that you love. That is what life gives you. Now, Kohelet is often critiqued for being a biblical voice of hedonism. That's what you got, Kohelet? Really? That's it? That's your answer to frustration and failure? Is creature comforts? A glass of wine, sourdough bread, a nice afternoon with somebody you love? That's it? What about human wrestling? What about aspiration? What about building something that's larger than you? What about building something that's noble? What about striving? What about searching? You're telling me Bible source, just eat some bread? Really? To which Kohelet says, you don't get it. You don't get it. I'm not a source of hedonism. I'm a source of humility and restraint. I'm telling you what's possible. Here's what's not possible. You know what's not possible? Go fix the world. Not possible. Go fix the world. Not going to happen. Go fix the world. Vapor and mist. What is possible is this moment. Live it with somebody you love. Don't go and build other nations. How much hubris is that? Build some other nation. Hubris. What about, Kohelet would say, do a better job of building our nation so that more of our citizens could eat their bread in gladness? That's one source, Kohelet. But it's not the only source. Here's the other source. The other source happens to be the first verse in our Torah reading today. The other source, as it happens, is the first reading. First verse, Ki teitze lamilchama al oivecha. When you go to war against your enemies. Now here's the main thing. Don't miss this. Don't miss this. This is just so important. The key word is key. The key word is key in ki teitze. The key word is key in ki teitze because key in ki teitze does not mean if. Key in ki teitze means when. When you go to war, not if you go to war. The Torah we just read from, the Torah we just put away says that war is an inevitable part of the human condition. When you go to war. Because if you want to be able to eat your bread in gladness and drink your wine in joy, the only way that happens, the only way we get to enjoy ordinary satisfactions is if we deal with the real evil that exists in the world. 9/11, those planes crash into the Twin Towers. The Torah reading on 9/11, which is actually next week's portion, says as follows. This was what we read in the Torah the week of 9/11. The Lord will bring a nation against you from afar, from the end of the earth, which will swoop down like the eagle, a nation whose language you do not understand, a ruthless nation that will show the old no regard and the young no mercy. There is evil in the world. That evil is real. And that evil will consume you if you don't deal with it. If you want to eat your bread in gladness and drink your wine in joy, you better have a strong army. Otherwise, no bread, no wine, no gladness, no joy. Ki tetze, when you go to war. So, where are we left? When you look at the Jewish canon, we're left in the same place that our nation is left. Kind of a hot mess. Kind of a hot mess and no closure and no tidy answer. You have two sources and they're both right. And they're just in tension. You have Hakol Havalim, spending 20 years, 775,000 soldiers, multiple tours of duty, 20,000 maimed soldiers, 2,400 departed soldiers, $83 billion, and the Taliban stronger than ever. Hakol Havalim, utter futility. And Ki tetze, la milchama, when you go to war, because if you think that we can just close ourselves off from the world, we have another thing coming. Now, we encounter this mess, this hot mess, during the month of Elul, the month before the holidays. And the work of Elul is to look at our past. What mistakes did we make? And how can we learn from those mistakes? And how can we grow from those mistakes? And what pain did we cause? How do we break stuff? What pain did we cause, and how can we redeem that pain? By somehow bringing out of the bad something good. Which brings me to the loveliest document that I read all week, a letter from the governor of Utah, Spencer Cox. Governor Cox writes the following letter to President Biden. Dear President Biden, I am deeply saddened by the human tragedy currently unfolding in Afghanistan. I recognize that Utah plays no direct role in shaping U.S. diplomatic or military policy, but we do have a long history of welcoming refugees from around the world and helping them restart their lives in a new country. We are eager to continue that practice and to assist with the resettlement of individuals and families fleeing Afghanistan, especially those who valiantly helped U.S. troops, diplomats, journalists, and other civilians over the past 20 years. As you may already know, Utah's history guides our approach to refugees. Our state was settled by refugees fleeing religious persecution 170 years ago. Their descendants have a deep understanding of the danger and pain caused by forced migration and an appreciation for the wonderful contributions of refugees in our communities. Please advise us in the coming days and weeks how we can assist. Sincerely, Spencer J. Cox, Governor. That's an Elul move. May this month of Elul before our holidays inspire our beloved nation to do an honest assessment of what went wrong and how that happened for 20 years. A 20-year failed war. May we do an honest assessment. And may the insights that we get from that assessment be deeply internalized so that we never make this mistake again. And may we redeem the pain by keeping faith with the Afghan translators, so desperate they're clawing onto a plane. May we keep the faith with the translators who kept faith with us. Shabbat Shalom.